The box arrived on a Tuesday. It was not a large box. 12 inches by 10, sealed with brown packing tape, handwriting on the outside in the particular cursive of a woman who learned to write when handwriting was still taught as a discipline. Each letter formed with intention, each word spaced with care. It had been shipped from the storage unit of a church in Newark, New Jersey, addressed to Shaquille O'Neal's business office in Los Angeles, with a cover letter from a deacon explaining that the church had been clearing out a long-term storage room and had found a box labeled with his mother's name and his childhood address and the year 1985, and that they thought he should have it. His assistant set it on his desk. He looked at it for most of the morning without opening it. He had learned, over 52 years, that certain boxes hold the kind of weight that cannot be put back once you let it out, and that the moment before you open them is the last moment you get to not know what's inside. He opened it at 2:17 in the afternoon. There was a stack of pay stubs held together with a rubber band that had dried and cracked. There was a name badge, white plastic, clip-on, the kind every institutional uniform has, that read Lucille in black letters, and below that, in smaller text, Newark Metropolitan Hospital, housekeeping. There was a second badge, this one laminated, for a dry cleaning operation on Ferry Street that Shaq did not recognize. There was a third badge, cardboard, handwritten, for a catering company whose name he did not recognize either, operating out of a kitchen in the Ironbound district. He sat with those 3 badges for a long time. 3 jobs. His mother. 1985. He was 13 years old in 1985, and he did not know about a single one of them. But before you understand what he found next at the bottom of that box, the thing that undid him completely, there are 3 things already in place that morning that you need to see. 3 things sitting in 3 different places, all of them waiting, the way certain facts wait until you are finally old enough to hold them. The first was a ledger, small, spiral-bound, its cover soft with age. The kind of ledger you buy at a dollar store for accounting, you cannot afford a proper accountant to do. It was in the box, beneath the badges. Every page was filled with Lucille's handwriting in columns, dates on the left, amounts in the middle, a single word on the right that read either enough or short. The columns ran from January 1983 to November 1988. Shaq had not yet reached it. He was still holding the badges. The second was a name, written on the last page of the ledger in different ink, darker, pressed harder, that he would not read for another 40 minutes. The name was not his. It was not his stepfather Phillips. It was the name of a woman Shaq had known growing up. A neighbor. A woman who had brought food to their apartment on certain evenings and whom Lucille had always introduced as a friend from church. Her name was Vivian. The third was a letter, still folded, still sealed, tucked inside the back cover of the ledger, addressed in Lucille's handwriting to Shaq, with a date in the upper right corner, December 25th, 1988, Christmas Day. He was 16. He never received it. He did not know any of this yet. He was still sitting at his desk with 3 plastic badges in his hands, doing the arithmetic of a life he thought he understood. Now here is what you need to know about Lucille O'Neal before you can feel the full weight of what was in that box. Lucille O'Neal was born in 1953 in Newark, New Jersey. The youngest of 4 children raised by a woman who cleaned other people's houses, and a man who worked the overnight shift at a canning plant and was home for dinner on most Fridays, and not much else. She grew up understanding before she could articulate it that the distance between enough and not enough was not measured in dollars but in shifts, in how many hours a human body could be made to produce before it needed to stop, and whether the number you got for those hours was the number the bill required. She was not a woman who talked about this. She was a woman who managed it. There is a difference. A person who talks about hardship is looking backward. A person who manages it is looking forward, and Lucille O'Neill had been looking forward since she was old enough to understand that the looking was how you got there. She met Philip Harrison when Shaq was 6. Philip was military, army, career, the kind of man who would not say "I love you" without meaning something specific by it, and who showed love through the precise language of expectation, showing up, keeping your word, not complaining about things you could change. He posted his one rule on the inside of every front door they ever had. Do not be a reaction. Be a response. He said it until it became weather. He is gone now, died in 2013, but the masking tape strip is still framed, still in the entrance hall of every property Shaq has ever owned, still the first thing he reads when he walks into any room he calls his. Philip took care of what Philip could take care of. But Philip was deployed for 14 of the months between January 1983 and November 1988. Deployed, and in training, and processing out of one base and into another, and Lucille did not call him to explain the arithmetic of the ledger, because she did not call anyone to explain the arithmetic of the ledger. She opened the ledger and wrote short or enough in the right-hand column, and then she went to work. Shaq grew up with a mother who was always there. That is the thing that makes the ledger difficult to look at. She was there when he left for school. She was there when he came home. She was there on weekends, cooking, helping with homework, watching his games, taking him to practice, doing all the things that the visible record of a childhood shows a present and attentive mother doing. He did not know, because she did not show, that she was doing these things on 4 hours of sleep. He did not know that the hospital housekeeping shift ended at 6 a.m. and that she came home and made breakfast and sent him to school and then slept from 8 to 11 and then went to the dry cleaner and then to the catering kitchen on Friday evenings. He did not know that she had arranged the shifts, all 3 of them, around his schedule, around the gaps where he would not see her leave or notice her gone. He did not know because she was very, very good at it, and because she needed him not to know. The reason was in the letter, the one she wrote on Christmas Day 1988 and never sent. Now here is what you need to know about Vivian. Vivian Lattimore lived 2 floors above the O'Neill apartment from 1982 to 1991. She was 43 in 1983, a retired home economics teacher with bad knees and a very good ear for what was happening in a building, and she had looked at Lucille O'Neill in the fall of 1982. The particular way Lucille moved through a hallway, the particular way she managed her grocery bags, the particular way she laughed at things that were not actually funny. And she had understood something that Lucille had not said to anyone. She began bringing food. She framed it as reciprocity. Oh, I made too much. You would be doing me a favor. And Lucille accepted it on those terms, because accepting it as charity would have required Lucille to acknowledge something she could not afford to acknowledge without losing the forward-looking that kept everything working. Vivian understood this. She never named the thing. She just brought the food. She brought it for 6 years. She was at every one of Shaq's games that Lucille could not make because of the hospital shift. She sat in the bleachers with a piece of cardboard she had written his number on in marker. He had thought she just liked basketball. She did not just like basketball. Her name was the last entry on the last page of the ledger. Beneath the final column, the final enough written in November 1988, the month Philip Harrison came back, Lucille had written Vivian Lattimore, apartment 4C. She knew. She never said. God bless her for both. Shaq found this at 3:04 p.m. He read it twice. He sat back in his chair. He had known Vivian as a child the way children know the reliable adults around them. Not fully. Not as people with their own interior lives and choices and costs, but as fixtures, as the background characters of a childhood who simply exist and are kind and then, one day, are gone. Vivian had moved out of the building in 1991. He had not thought about her in years. He did not know if she was alive. He called his mother at 3:11 p.m. The call lasted 1 hour and 44 minutes. Lucille answered on the second ring. She always answers on the second ring. She listened to him read the ledger entries to her, date by date, column by column, the shorts and the enoughs, in a silence that was not defensive, not ashamed, but the particular silence of someone who had put a thing away for 37 years and was now watching it come back into the room and was deciding how to be with it. She said, when he was done reading, in the voice that never breaks, "I didn't want you to be heavy with it." He said nothing. She said, "You had enough to carry. Being 13 is enough to carry." He said, "Mama." She said, "I had it handled." He said, "I know you did." She said, "The ledger was for me. So I could see that it was working. So on the nights when it felt like it wasn't, I could open it and look at the enoughs and know that it was working." She paused. 12 months I wrote short. The rest I wrote enough. I want you to remember the number that was bigger. He remembered. The letter was still sealed on his desk. He had not told her about the letter. He asked her about it at 4:43 p.m., near the end of the call, in the same quiet tone he had used for the ledger. There was a longer silence this time. Then she said, "I wrote it for you. I meant to give it to you when you were older. And then I decided that if I had handled it right, you would never need to read it, and that the not needing to would be proof that I had done it right." She stopped. "I put it away in that box as a kind of test for myself, I suppose. If the day came when you needed it, when there were cracks in what I built, I would find it and give it to you then." She paused again. "There were never any cracks," she said. He opened the letter after the call. He read it alone. He will not say everything that was in it. It belongs to him and to her, the way certain things only belong to two people. But he has said this much. She wrote about the third job, the catering kitchen in the Ironbound, and she wrote that the thing she was afraid of was not the exhaustion and not the money. The thing she was afraid of was that he would feel it, that some morning he would look at her and see the tiredness and understand what it meant, and that the understanding would make him feel responsible, and that a 13-year-old boy who felt responsible for his mother's exhaustion would become a different kind of 13-year-old than she needed him to be. She wrote, "You were meant to be light. Not because the weight wasn't real, because you were going to need all of yourself later, and I was keeping you whole." He read that line 3 times. He set the letter down on his desk next to the 3 badges and the ledger with the cracked rubber band. He looked at all of it for a while. Then he picked up his phone. Vivian Lattimore was 74 years old and living in East Orange, New Jersey, in a garden apartment she had moved to in 2003. And she was, according to the search that took his assistant 11 minutes, very much alive. She had a landline. He called it. She answered on the 4th ring, in the careful way people answer calls from numbers they don't recognize. He said his name. There was a silence. Then she said, in a voice that had aged but had kept its particular quality, warm, dry, precise, "Well, I wondered if this day would come." He said he had found the ledger. He said he had found her name at the bottom of the last page. He said he wanted her to know that he understood now what she had done. He said he had not understood it as a child, and he was calling to say that he understood it now. Vivian said, "Your mother was the strongest person I have ever personally known, and I taught high school for 22 years, so that is a significant field." She paused. "I brought the food because she let me bring the food." That was the bravery. Her letting me. A lot of people would not have. She let me because it was for you, not for her. He said, "She says you never named it." Vivian said, naming it would have cost her something she needed. I had enough. She didn't. It was very simple. He invited her to dinner. Not a gesture, not a gift, not a news story. Dinner. At a restaurant in Newark of her choosing. With Lucille, who did not yet know he was calling. He told her he was going to call his mother next and ask her to come, and that he hoped she would say yes. Vivian said, "She'll say yes." She was right. They had dinner on a Friday evening in April. 3 people at a corner table in a restaurant on Broad Street in Newark. Lucille ordered what she always orders, something with fish, something light, water, no dessert. Vivian ordered the same. Shaq ordered the largest thing on the menu, which made Vivian say, "Some things don't change," in a tone that had known him since he was 11 years old. At the end of the meal, he set the 3 badges on the table. Lucille looked at them. She did not say anything. Vivian looked at them and then looked at Lucille, and they communicated something in the specific language of 2 women who have carried a secret together for 37 years, a language that does not require words. And Vivian set her hand briefly over Lucille's hand on the table, and then took it back and picked up her water glass, and they both said nothing. And the saying nothing was the whole conversation. He did not give a speech. He did not present a check. He did not do the thing that gets done in videos where a gift is revealed in an envelope to the sound of music. He had one thing he wanted to say, and he said it. He said, "I know you said you had it handled. I know you did. I'm not telling you I found the box because I think you needed help. I'm telling you because the ledger belongs to you, and so do the enoughs. All 67 of them. And I want you to know that I counted." Lucille looked at him for a long moment. Her face did the thing it rarely does. The thing that is not quite crying but lives one breath away from it. Then she straightened. She picked up her water glass. She said, "I knew you would count them." She had known. She had written every one. Philip Harrison's rule says not to be a reaction, to be a response. But what Lucille O'Neill built in those 67 months of enough was not a reaction to poverty. It was not a reaction to absence or fear or exhaustion. It was a response, patient, precise, private, built on 4 hours of sleep and a dollar store ledger and a neighbor who had enough to give and the grace to give it without naming it. It was a response that cost everything she had and left nothing visible. The whole point was that it left nothing visible. The box on the desk, the badges, the ledger with the cracked rubber band. That is what a response looks like when it has been sitting in a church storage room for 37 years waiting for the person it was built for to be ready to hold it. He is ready now. And so are you, if someone in your life has been carrying something you didn't know about. Drop a comment and tell us, where are you watching from, and has someone ever protected you from a weight you never knew they were holding? We read every word. If this reached something in you, let the like button carry it. Not for the numbers, but because Lucille O'Neill wrote enough 67 times, and she deserves to know how far that word traveled. Subscribe to this community if you haven't yet. The people in this channel are the reason we find these stories, and every person who joins makes the next one possible. The next story is already waiting for you. We will see you there.